applies from now on. So to detox your mind, you have to think about from now to the past and revisit the past with a more positive perspective. So we're going to start with this little story to show how events don't have a meaning on their own, and we're usually trying to find a meaning in an event isolated from a sequence, but events are connected to the past and they're connected to the future. So there was an old farmer and his son, and they had this horse, and they trained the horse, and then one day the horse was missing, and then the neighbors were, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, this is so unfortunate." But the farmer calmly said, "Good or bad, we shall see." After a week, the horse returned with another horse, and they were very happy, and the neighbors said, "Oh, how lucky you are," and they praised the luck, and the farmer calmly said, "Good or bad, we shall see." Then the boy was training the new horse, and then he fell off the horse and broke his leg, and then the neighbor said, "Oh, this is terrible, what a terrible misfortune," and the farmer said, "Good or bad, we shall see." Then the next week, some soldiers came into the town, and they had to take all the young men to war, but the farmer's son couldn't go because he had a broken leg. And so the villagers said, "How lucky you are," and the farmer said, "Good or bad, we shall see." So that's a little story. And this just shows that events are not good or bad on their own. We give them a meaning, and they're also part of a sequence of events. And so they might appear to be good at one point, and then they turn out to be bad. It really depends on a lot of circumstances. But let's now talk about how to detox our mind. So if we want to detox our mind, let's think about how do we detox other things, like the body. What do we do when we want to detox the body? Well, we drink a lot of water, we eat more vegetables, we eat more fruits, we might take baths with Epsom salts to get rid of the dead skin, or we could do something more invasive like colonics. What do we do when we want to detox the soul? Well, there's retreats. Religious retreats are about silence, prayer, journaling. There might be confessional sharing. There's the studying of scripture. But mostly you're just pulled out of your routine. You have no schedule, no time, no interference. And through the stillness, you develop your appreciation for your spiritual inner life. But the point here is, how do we detox the mind? So in the Western world, when someone has lost their inner peace, we associate that with mental illness. And so the approach of psychology towards someone trying to find their inner peace is by letting them communicate, vent, or express themselves. The problem with that is that there's a trap. Sometimes people, when they go to therapy, they're talking about these toxic people in their lives. And there's two groups. So there's the victim, who is needy, clingy, complaining, and it's a burden. And then there's the victimizer, who is intimidating, controlling, jealous, manipulative, and a bully. But those two people are part of a plot. They're part of a story. And so if the patient shows up to therapy only to complain and whine and protest, the story is being repeated over and over and over, and it's being reinforced. So like they say, it takes two to tango. But if the patient is not doing the proper work, there will be no progress. So have you heard of the toga war? Well, how does the toga war end? One person lets go of the toga, and there's no toga war. So that would look like one person letting go of this story and not playing the same character in that plot, and then the plot ends. The good therapist is the therapist that will ask the patient, why are you here? What is your goal? What are we going to work on? And how long do you want to be here? There's supposed to be a goal and a time frame and a plan of action. Sometimes the situation that created this need, it's long and it requires more therapy, and that's okay. But therapy should be driven to resolve a problem. Many therapists are not that focused, and it's okay. But the greatest therapist is the teacher. The teacher will train the patient to resolve his or her own problems. And the teacher will create a safe space where the patient gets to practice healthy communication. And then when the patient goes back home, then they can use these tools. So what's the secret of a great therapist? Well, there's two types of reasoning, inductive and deductive. Inductive is not very solid because it lets you come to a wrong conclusion. So I'll give you an example. The first premise is weak, and then the second premise is super weak. So the first premise in the inductive reasoning is Mary is a grandmother. therefore Mary is fat. Or John is a grandfather, therefore John is bald. That makes no sense. So the deductive reasoning is stronger. And I'm going to give you an example. So when there is humidity in the environment, clouds form. When clouds form, there can be rain. Therefore, when there's humidity, there can be rain. So A equals B, B equals C, then A equals C. It's a little bit stronger. The logic is stronger. If we use this reasoning, we will improve our lives and those of people who we love. And I participated in a group where I learned this communication protocol, and it's basically deductive reasoning. So when you are interacting with someone and this person wants to resolve a problem, do not tell them what to do. It will not work. And you don't have their solution. They have their own solution. So the true strategies to help someone find their own solutions is, number one, ask them questions. Number two, tell a story. So when you ask questions, you guide the person to come to their own conclusions and to find their own solutions. When you tell a story, you're basically saying, when I was in a similar situation, this is how I handled it. Maybe this will help you. So if we support or judge, we're not being helpful, because if we support the person who's telling the story, then we're blaming the other person, and we might not be objective enough. It's important to keep in mind that we need boundaries. Why do we need boundaries? Because through boundaries, there's no rescuing. So it is not my job to fix others or take responsibility for them. It is okay to say no, and it is okay if others get angry. My boundaries for me is I don't have to anticipate the needs of others, and not everybody has to agree with me. I am responsible for my own happiness, and I have the right to my own feelings. Those are some ideas on how to set boundaries. And the great part about having boundaries is that when I see my life as my own doing, I take responsibility. And I help the other person do the same. I don't rescue the other person, and the other person doesn't rescue me. So there's something in our bodies that has to do with chemicals when we have certain feelings. And so if we are always part of these interactions where there's sadness and anger and sadness, then we crave those feelings. And we crave those stories. We become addicted to those stories, to those characters, to those plots. And so if we start changing our thoughts, we start changing our thoughts about certain experiences, and we begin to change the past and how we approach the stories we have been telling ourselves. So experiences, even past experiences, can change through our thoughts. There's a quote by Milan Kundera. He wrote this in his book, Life is Elsewhere, and he's talking about the past. He says, you think that just because it's already happened, the past is finished and unchangeable? Oh no. The past is cloaked in multicolored taffeta, and every time we look at it, we see a different hue, a different tone. So we are creating as we see. And so our perspective will define what we see. So sometimes we need the help of those who love us, and those could be our friends or our family. And here's another quote by Kundera, and this is from the book Identity, and he wrote about friendship. Friendship is indispensable to man for the proper function of his memory. Remembering our past, carrying it with us always, may be the necessary requirement for maintaining, as they say, the wholeness of the self. To ensure that the self doesn't shrink, to see that it holds on to its volume, memories have to be watered like potted flowers, and the watering calls for regular contact with the witnesses of the past, that is to say, with friends. They are our mirror, our memory. We ask nothing of them but that they polish the mirror from time to time so we can look at ourselves. People who love us might help us remember the good stuff, because sometimes we shrink the good memories, the happy memories, and we forget. And there are people who will help us remember. And so in the theory of evolution, they believe that animals don't waste resources. If we follow the theory of evolution, we should stop wasting our time trying to change others or trying to complain about something that doesn't work, and we need to focus on what works, hang out with people that are like us, and enhance each other. Instead of complaining about what we don't like, we should create something that we like. Thank you.